With another model year comes another three-row SUV. These are both mid-size, but they look pretty large. Brand new 2024 Grand Highlander from Toyota, and the tried and true, at least for now, the 2024 Palisade by Hyundai. This one's been out for a while, we've loved it in past reviews, but how are they both gonna compare in terms of performance, value, and probably more important than anything else, the amount of room in the third rows? Well, let's find out. The Grand Highlander is brand new for 2024. The Palisade has been out for several years. It came out for 2020. Both of these SUVs have seating for up to 7 or 8 passengers, depending on what you put in the second row, and they are approaching the luxury segment, not just in terms of price, but in all the features and amenities that you can order inside them. Do you want complex or do you want simple? There's only one choice here on the Palisade. It's a 3.8-liter V6, 8-speed automatic. All-wheel drive is optional on everything except the Calligraphy Night Edition, which is a new trim for 2024. Over on the Grand Highlander, you've got 3 different powertrain options. This one is the 2.4-liter Turbo 4, which makes slightly less horsepower but way more torque than this Palisade's V6. All-wheel drive is optional on most trims. This is the Platinum, so it comes standard. There's also a hybrid with a naturally aspirated inline 4, optional all-wheel drive with an electric rear motor, and then there's the Hybrid Max, which includes a Turbo 4 just like this one with a more powerful electric motor, a ton of power, over 360 horsepower and 400 pound-feet. Those are numbers that you cannot get on the Palisade. And there's a variety of transmission options as well. When it comes to fuel economy, the Grand Highlander performs better than this big Palisade with the larger V6 engine. Check out those numbers. The Palisade really doesn't perform well, I think, at all. And when you look at all of the numbers available in the Grand Highlander, you can get over 36 mpg. Now that's something you cannot say about any 3-row SUV in this size class. Very impressive. Only available on certain trims, but no matter which one you choose, this is the more efficient choice. If you want that off-road look, but without the off-road performance, the Palisade might be your choice. The XRT trim, that's what this is. Darkened wheels, darkened grille, standard cross rails, which you ordinarily don't find as standard in many SUVs. And it's got some extra cladding here along the sides. Is it actually more off-road ready? No. But I think the look, the stance, the fact that this vehicle is just a bit lower and less van looking than the Grand Highlander, this might be your choice for a more utilitarian looking SUV. The Grand Highlander might say grand, but the appearance kind of suggests otherwise. It's plainer, it's flatter, it's more conventional looking. I will give it this. It's nicer looking and more angular and crisper than the current Highlander. And when you look at it from a whole, yes, it's long and it's elegant, very simple. What you're finding is a very high shoulder line, especially when you come to the front. This vehicle just appears larger in every sense of the term than the Palisade, even though they're both very similar to drive and similar specs. You have to ask yourself, do you want a longer, larger looking vehicle, or do you want something that looks a little nimbler and sportier? The Grand Highlander is the bigger SUV. The wheelbase is 2 inches longer. It's 5 inches longer overall, and it's 1 inch taller and just about a ½ inch wider. Both of them have the same 8-inch ground clearance, but nose to nose, the Grand Highlander is looking really grand. Cargo space. Only one of these SUVs is going to walk away from the other in terms of numbers. Behind the third row, the Grand Highlander has just a few more cubes of space versus this Palisade. Now fold those seats down. This one's coming ahead. Fold all the seats down, and the Grand Highlander just eats the Palisade for lunch, dinner, and breakfast in the next morning. 98 cubic feet compared to 86. This is very impressive as it is, but 98 cubic feet is unheard of in this class. You would have to step up to a large SUV based on a truck platform to get that kind of number. And there's more space in here than there is in the bigger Sequoia. So in terms of space, packaging, and efficiency, this is the clear winner. This Palisade has power heated front seats, it's got captain's chairs, it's got wireless phone charging, but none of them are standard on the base Palisade, which is also why it's about $7,000 less than the Grand Highlander XLE. Any way you look at it though, this is still the better value to start. The Palisade has more buttons and switches, and that's a good thing. It's actually easier to use than the Grand Highlander, which buries a lot of functions like the radio and the map and the nav shortcuts right into the touchscreen. But the materials, even though this is not the top trim, just don't feel quite as nice. Compared to the Grand Highlander, the Palisade has up to 2.5 inches more legroom and slightly more headroom in this first row. And these seats are actually comfortable, so no matter which trim you buy, you're getting the same great seats. In the Palisade, there's almost 3 inches more legroom than the Grand Highlander. It's a pretty spacious second row. On the XRT, you also get these standard window shades. I like these cabin chairs because there's little nets here on the side, nice for smartphones. USB holders right in the front seats, really nicely upholstered front mat pockets. 3-zone climate is standard on all Palisades. And I do like, versus the Grand Highlander, that this armrest, once you lock it down here, it ratchets up and it stays in this position, just like Land Rovers. In the Grand Highlander, it doesn't do that. Egress into the third row, pretty easy for an adult. And the legroom, as long as this seat is up a little bit more, isn't that bad, but the width is really not good. You could supposedly fit 3, but this is really just 2 small kids for short distances. The seats in this Grand Highlander, also very comfortable. They're heated, they're ventilated, they're not massaging though, so missing a few extra features that you'd have to get the Lexus TX to buy. But this is a pretty nice place to sit. While the Grand Highlander doesn't feel as practically designed as the Palisade because so many features are now bundled into the touchscreen or the instrument panel, I think it just looks more upscale. I think this is just a nicer looking, more higher quality design, except this fake wood trim. That really doesn't look good. I think there's better storage options in this Grand Highlander. The central cubby is just very deep. There's a tray in here. There's 13 total cup holders and bottle holders, and there's tablet holders everywhere. Trays you can see right here, here, here. I mean, there's just plenty of places to store stuff. The Grand Highlander, these captain's chairs are not quite as comfortable as those in the Palisade, but on this trim they are heated and ventilated, which you can get on upper trims of the Palisade. But what you can't is a center console. This one has even more cup holders, tablet holders, change holders, and you can remove it. Pretty easy. If you just want to have an extra step in for the rear third row, it snaps right into place. I also like these armrests, but as you can see, they're only down in this lower position. On the Palisade, they lock. Egress into the third row, not any easier than it is in the Palisade, but once the seat is back, there's 2 more inches of legroom. There's 2.5 inches more shoulder room and 2 inches more hip room. So this whole bench is wider, even though it has the same headroom. For an adult, it's significantly better than the regular Highlander and that Palisade. I only wish that there was just some extra padding here, not a giant cup holder here, because your arm cannot really rest that comfortably. Every Palisade comes with a 12.3-inch touchscreen. Unlike the Grand Highlander, it does not have wireless Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, so you'll have to connect the USB cable, but there's plenty of ports in this car, so you'll be able to find a free one. My only real gripe is the fact that all of these icons look identical in shape and size and color, so at speed, it's a little difficult to adjust. However, once you get used to it and where everything is, you'll find that the vehicle menus are very easy because there's a lot of explanations, a lot of graphical illustrations that tell you everything that you're doing. There's also a lot of driving assistance features as standard. Highway driving assist also comes standard. Version 1 does a whole lot of things just like the Grand Highlander, but only the top trims of the Palisade will do some extra features like brake and front cross traffic alert. That you have to get the calligraphy and other top trims. On this trim of the Palisade, the XRT, you can get a digital key just like the Grand Highlander. You can also text this to your phone so someone else can unlock and start the car. There's other nice things, automatic rear wipers in reverse, one-touch turn signals. That might seem like a usual thing, but the fact that you can adjust all of this, almost every single feature on this car can be switched on or off. That's what I really like about it. Every Palisade also comes with a digital instrument cluster, and I thought this was just one view, but these are all the views you get. It's just different colors, and you get this kind of 1980s alarm clock look. This would not be my choice because upper trims of the Palisade have very nice looking analog gauges. They're all digital, but there's a lot more customization you can use. However, you can still see a lot of information at a glance. The only issue here is it's a lot of wasted space. You can only see it here in the center, as opposed to, well, the entire screen. There's no full screen maps or full screen driver assists. The Grand Highlander has a 12.3-inch touchscreen with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but because there's no shortcut buttons below here, you have to hit the Toyota app, and that can be kind of hard to use when you're in several other CarPlay apps. Also, Navigation requires a subscription. It only comes with 1 year included when you buy it brand new, and that means everything on this map you can't get unless you're paying for. The Palisade has all the maps all the time. There's a lot of good, little information here. It's simpler than the Palisade, and that can be a good thing because it's relatively quick. The screen is high res. The cameras, also pretty decent, except for this image. I'm not really sure what the point of that is. When you actually use the 360 cameras, these images are so much better. This is a much better instrument panel. Why? Because you can change all the functionality in the center, what's on the tach, and what's on the speedometer. All this information is readily available at a glance, and then when you go into the settings, on upper trims you can adjust the head-up display, and there's a ton of safety features that come standard on every Grand Highlander. My only gripe here is that you have to go into the meter settings to actually change how the graphics actually look. So, this should really be a shortcut button, but it is nice to have this, and it's so much nicer looking than what you'll find in the Palisade. Toyota just needs to clean up some of the menus here because they're just not as easy to use as what you'll find in the Palisade. The Palisade does things the old-fashioned way, big V6, no turbos, no electric motors. It's just size alone. The performance is generally pretty good in sport mode, especially if you have the right gear, because there's not a lot of low-end torque compared to that Toyota, so you do have to work this a little harder. But the sound is pretty good. It's not too loud. Past Hyundai engines I haven't really been in love with. They've definitely improved a lot of the noise and the vibration and the harshness that had been present before. It's definitely tamped down a bit. I like that part of it. You can just activate it in drive by just holding that right paddle. Really nice. The driving modes are right here in front of me. And I can put it back to comfort and I get a more lazy throttle response, which I think is appropriate for most highway cases. But if you really want to get up and go, you have to put it in sport. There's just no other way to go about it. There's also a tow mode. There's a button over here, separate from the regular dial, and that will optimize the engine and transmission based on the weight that you're choosing on here on the touchscreen. That's a nice feature because cars like this are not heavy duty, so any little extra assistance from that engine and the gears to keep your trailer safe while going uphill, definitely a good thing. This Palisade has highway driving assist number 1. There's a version 2, which is on the upper trims, adds a few more extra safety features, but like the Toyota, it has the self-steering with the adaptive cruise control. It does not have automatic lane changes. The Toyota does. Toyota just has a few extra features on that. That one also is the Platinum model versus the XRT, which this one is. So you have to spend a little bit more on the Palisade to equal the Toyota, which is higher in price for our comparison. But whenever you're shopping, just know that the features are very, very comparable across the lineup. At highway speeds, the Palisade's pretty quiet, just like the Grand Highlander. But this one, a little bit noisier because it has cross rails. They come standard on the XRT. Very helpful if you want to have a kayak or bikes on the roof. Not great if you just want to drive on the highway, but that's like any SUV or sedan with these rails. You got to take them off. A lot of people leave them on, but it does reduce your gas mileage, and it does just have this annoying noise. But just know that the Palisade is quiet. It feels pretty much just as quiet as that Grand Highlander. It's got the acoustic laminated glass and everything, all that good stuff. So you're not getting shortchanged on that. The Palisade just seems to boogie a little bit more. When you're in the right gear, it's clear that this one, it's egging you on to just go a little quicker, maybe take that corner a little quicker. But then you got to back off because, well, you got 4 kids in the back. At the end of the day, this is still meant to be more comfortable, but just going through turns, I'm not tossing around too much. You're really not. And the ride doesn't suffer either, no matter what wheel and tire choice that you're using. and the engine really isn't all that loud. And I will say, it's just a little bit more fun to drive. The initial pedal bite, a little spongy, but it's a little bit better also than that Grand Highlander. Not great, but I think you'll like it. This engine is smaller, it makes less horsepower, but a lot more torque, a lot lower RPM. That means step on the gas in any gear, and this is accelerating quicker than that Palisade with the much larger V6 engine. The Grand Highlander comes standard with this Turbo 4, and it has everything in it that improves Toyota's naturally aspirated 4, which is in the RAV4 and was in the regular Highlander for quite some time. This is so much better. Toyota's naturally aspirated 4s, unless you're driving a Toyota GR86, which of course is built by Subaru, they don't really make great 4-cylinder engines. And when you're asked to power something this large, it didn't really work. And now that the Grand Highlander is so much larger, I'm just glad they put an engine that can take everything, and it's so much quieter too. Just like the Palisade, there's an 8-speed automatic transmission and paddle shifters. And pretty good response, and really good noise and vibration. This is the engine that Toyota needed for years. And even though there was a previous generation, the big V6, 3.5 liter, it worked great, but this feels snappier in response. Yeah, it's so much better. Toyota needed to do this like a generation ago. I'm glad they're here now, because against that Palisade with its larger displacement V6, this is getting the better fuel economy, and it's getting better performance and equal towing, 5,000 pounds on both these cars. The name Highlander conjures up a comfortable riding Toyota that doesn't handle very well. But in the last few years, Toyota has upped their game on the regular Highlander. Check out my review of the Highlander XSE. That is the sport tune model, the regular length. Toyota does not offer that in the Grand Highlander, not yet anyway. But as it stands, this is an all-new chassis, not shared with the regular Highlander. And because of that, yeah, you get more room, but you get a chassis that's better optimized for the bigger wheelbase and the length. So it still feels really nimble, very solid, rides terrifically. I would say there's probably just a little softer suspension here than in that Palisade on some of these undulating bumps and kind of crests on this back road here. It's a little just more damped. You know, you can definitely feel like it's softer here riding. And there's definitely less steering feel than that Palisade. I wish there was just a little bit more feedback going on. Sport mode kind of improves that. Not really. Slightly increases the weight, but this definitely has the more Lexus feel where you can just kind of one-hand it all the time. I don't have as much confidence as to exactly the angle where these wheels are pointed, but suspension performance is pretty good. It may ride a little softer, but it doesn't really roll that much at all. So both this and the Palisade, very good handling big SUVs. If you get into the larger Sequoia, or you choose anything from a full-size truck, like Suburbans and Tahoes, you're not gonna get this level of comfort and poise on the road. They're just gonna feel more unwieldy. And that's where these vehicles really shine. The only other vehicles I would say that compete like this is probably a Grand Cherokee L. That costs even more than this Grand Highlander and that Palisade. So for this amount of money, especially as this is equipped in the 50s, even though it's more expensive than that Palisade, than that particular trim, both of them feel really tied down. And I'm just surprised at how well this drives. I was not expecting from the start to enjoy the Grand Highlander on curvy roads as much. I wouldn't. Yeah, and the compliance on poor pavement's also really nice. These are the 20-inch wheels, and feels like they were 17-inch. There's hardly any vibration coming through. That's especially good when you have a family and this fits a lot of people. You want the power to move and you also just want some agility. It definitely works a little harder when you hear the sound, but the momentum is great on this car, it is. Comparing the driver assistance systems, the Grand Highlander wins. Now, even if I had the Calligraphy Edition of that Palisade, it would not come with traffic jam assist, which this Grand Highlander has. It's got infrared cameras right in the steering column, and at 25 miles an hour and below, Toyota says you can have your eyes on the road and your hands off the wheel. It will self-steer, brake, all of that stuff. The Palisade, very good, but it does not offer that capability. A nice firm initial bite, then it gets a little spongy. I think the Palisade has a slightly better feel than this Grand Highlander. The 2024 Toyota Grand Highlander comes in 7 trims and starts at just over $43,000. That is almost $7,000 more to start than the Palisade. My Platinum with all-wheel drive was $54,940, fully loaded with destination. The 2024 Hyundai Palisade comes in 6 trims and starts at $36,400. But that trim gives you manual cloth seats and no heating, no lumbar, a lot of features that are missing. My XRT with mid-grade options was $45,100 with destination. There's one clear winner, and it's the Grand Highlander. Grand truly means that. It's larger in every way. Interior space, third row, cargo capacity, then you get the fuel efficiency, the choices of all the different powertrains, and the build quality from model to model, no matter which trim you're choosing. It's slightly elevated versus that Palisade. You're just gonna find more choices, more everything inside this car. The Palisade is a wonderful choice, and really it topped our list for many years, but Toyota it's come out swinging. Maybe it's a little more conservative in terms of its styling compared to that Palisade, but everything in the core of this vehicle is really what more shoppers are gonna want. So what do you think? Costs more money, but then again, so does everything these days. Go online to CarGurus.com. We'll try to help you find a good deal from dealers nationwide. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we will see you next time.